Some people are calling this like a crackdown by the federal government on journalists and their ability to exercise freedom of the press, which is also protected in the First Amendment. So I guess how do you see it?
I don't think that causing this like extra disruption in the church and, like scaring people for no reason is the correct answer to go about that.
One of the things that we were taught learning journalism is we're nobody's PR. So you're serving an audience, but when you're an activist journalist, you're kind of serving an agenda.
I know I wouldn't be on the carpet after that, let me tell you. Hi everyone, this is Abby and Colin, and we are recording a bonus episode for you today, commenting on the news so that you don't have to listen to the legacy media that your grandparents do. It is currently Monday, February 2nd.
Yeah, we just got so wrapped up last time talking about Nicki Minaj that we figured we needed a little second episode this week to bring some of the more serious stuff in as well, as we've been talking about Minneapolis and immigration. And last Friday there was a breaking incident where Don Lemon was arrested for his participation in a Minneapolis protest. And Abby, what did you see about, I guess, the incident itself, and then maybe your reaction a little bit about when he was arrested?
Yeah, the incident itself, I remember we talked about it 2 weeks ago, in a previous episode. And when he was actually arrested, I was pretty shocked. I think that they could be arresting other people right now or focusing on other people, such as the ICE agents that are involved in Alex Pretty's death. And I saw that he was taken in LA. He was there to cover the Grammys. And a bunch of people have been reacting to this story and if journalism is under the attack as well.
So I guess the incident where, Lemon was participating happened on January 18th at City's Church in Minneapolis. And as everyone knows, pretty much all of January since Renee Good was shot and killed on January 6th or 7th, people have been protesting and Lemon was there to kind of, I guess, in his eyes, cover it. But in this case, a bunch of people went into a church, City's Church, because the pastor there, David Easterwood, also leads a local ICE field office. So they were going there to, I guess, cause a disruption and bring attention to some of the hypocrisy of ICE and some of its tactics since the death of Good. And this was again January 18th, so this was before Alex Preddy had been shot and killed.
Hmm.
Um, as this unfolded, Lemon was also there, and people have called into question his foreknowledge of it. Going into the church with the protesters, was he just there to kind of cover it in a journalistic capacity, or had he actually been actively involved in planning it? And perhaps did he know some of the organizers involved? For instance, there was Nekima Levy Armstrong and William Kelly, who both were kind of leading this effort to go into the church. And yeah, what did you see any footage from when they were actually there in the church and what that looked like?
No, I didn't actually. What was happening in the footage?
I mean, it was pretty like ruckus. Like they went in there, they were very loud, they started chanting, they got like all up in the front of the church and were yelling stuff. For instance, like justice for Renee Good. They were yelling like hands up, don't shoot. They also apparently were like kind of blocking the aisles and like the exits. And as you can imagine, the people there in the church attending the service were very confused, if not
Right.
like scared. And there's like images of people kind of like with young kids in the church who are kind of like holding onto their kids like to comfort them. And it's just not a good scene at all. I question like why did they feel the need to go in during the middle of a service? Couldn't they have waited until afterward to maybe confront the pastor outside of the church, which would have been on public property, as opposed to, going into a church is technically on you're going on private property, and then you're adding in the element of disrupting their ability to worship, which is a protected First Amendment right.
Which is what we talked about a couple weeks ago too, and I still agree that I don't think people should be scared to worship in their place of worship or worship in general. Like I I don't think that they should have disrupted a mass or went in there or anything like that. I think that that might have been also largely reactionary, like they're trying to like make headlines and things like that. I could imagine that perspective. But I also can imagine them being angry as well. Like, I think a lot of the time people are doing a whole one or the other side. Like, it's very true that Renee Good's death is something to be angry about as well. But I don't think that causing this like extra disruption in the church and, like scaring people for no reason is the correct answer to go about that.
I agree. And so the charges that were brought up against the organizers and Lemon also, they were charging him on the Klan Act and also the FACE Act, which FACE stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. It's a law from 1994. The Klan Act also is a federal charge for people who engage in conspiracy against rights. So like if you are colluding with a group of people to prevent other people from exercising their constitutional rights, and particularly in cases where like the local government is not stepping in to um, rectify that, then they can charge you under this federal law, which is what happened. But yeah, so the other organizers were arrested earlier than Lemon was, like
Hmm.
I think the week before, and there was some
Were they
speculation.
charged on the same charges?
I think so, yeah. I think it's FACE Act and Klan
Hmm.
Act. But Lemon wasn't arrested until like about a week later. Did you hear anything about why there was such a delay?
I was confused why they waited until he got to LA to do his thing and arrest him there. Did you hear anything about that?
So I guess they had brought the charges to a magistrate judge who had said basically like there's not enough evidence to indict or bring charges against Lemon, and so they kind of rejected it. But then they ended up bringing it instead to like kind of the person who oversees the magistrate judge, like the next level up, who sent it back down and said either rewrite your affidavit, resubmit it to the magistrate judge, or we'll bring in a grand jury who can see all the evidence and vote on or decide whether or not there's a reasonable cause to bring charges against Lemon. So that's actually what ended up happening was they brought it before a Minnesota grand jury who decided, okay, actually we do think there's enough evidence here to bring these charges against Lemon. And that's kind of why his process was stalled compared to the other organizers who were arrested again like a week earlier.
And his situation became pretty viral, I'd want to say, like more over than the other arrests. And he's been talking a lot about it too. I actually listened to an episode of his show because he's an independent journalist now. And he was talking about the rights of the First Amendment. He did like a whole like breaking 8 to 10 minute episode, I think, about his beliefs and rights for the First Amendment and freedom of the press.
Yeah, so I guess we should get into how does that factor in here because that's kind of the open question is some people are calling this like a crackdown by the federal government on journalists and their ability to exercise freedom of the press, which is also protected in the First Amendment. So I guess how do you see it? Do you think that it is in fact going to, he's not going to be convicted because he was protected as a journalist, or do you think there's a pretty open question still?
I think it would be more black and white if he was honestly a part of legacy media, if he wasn't just an independent journalist. I do think that I'm leaning more towards the side that he should be protected under the First Amendment and his right to report on the news. But I could see like where things start to blur. You're obviously taking a risk when you're an independent journalist. I mean, Colin and I have talked about this also off camera a lot about hypothetical situations and things like that. So that's I think where I'm standing right now, but I do think that he should be protected.
I think as part of their investigation, they're going to have to show what was his knowledge going into the situation and had he been an active part of planning this.
Hmm.
And there is some early evidence to suggest that maybe he did know exactly what was going to happen. And one of the things that we were taught learning journalism is we're nobody's PR. So like
Yeah.
essentially, if there's a protest going on and you're there in a capacity as a journalist, like you're not there to I guess like amplify the protesters and what their message is. You're there to cover it objectively, get the facts of the situation, and then present that so that the public can decide on the merits of it and whether or not it's a significant story. So if in fact he had like prearranged with the organizers, um, that could, I guess, in my eyes, that makes it seem like he's acting as less of a journalist and more of an activist.
Yeah, I
And
can see that.
I guess how do you see that tension between journalists and activists?
It's really hard because as in college, when we were learning about journalism and, during our formative years there, like you are figuring out what you believe in. Even now, I think that through this podcast, we're figuring out what we believe in. And the reason why a lot of people, or the reason why I got into journalism is because I felt like I could amplify voices of people. And there is a way to do that in which you're not, like you said, serving PR for someone. And there is also like a really blurry line between that because you do want to naturally, like your natural biases do want to cover the stories that, you want people to hear, you want people to care about. But where's that line between that and making sure it is fair and honest journalism and showing all the sides of things?
And like in our old newsroom, we used to have a conversation a lot about the difference between like community-based journalism and then again the activist journalism. And there is a pretty clear difference in my eyes, at least. With like community-based journalism, you're covering again like sort of the people and their story and their comments and reactions to things. And that's sort of the main focus, and you're covering it for a specific, audience that is sort of like, again, needing to know this information to be better informed so that they can make, better decisions and whatnot. So you're serving an audience, but when you're an activist journalist, you're kind of serving an agenda. To me, yeah, the situation, it really blurs that line in a lot of different ways. And so my instinct when I see it is sort of just the footage so far about Lemon beforehand, like talking with the organizers and what they were there for. It kind of makes me feel like it is more agenda driven than community and information gathering driven.
I'm really excited to see, or not excited, but interested to see how things roll out. Because he's an independent journalist, I also think this could either open doors or close doors for independent journalists.
If he is like punished pretty hard, that would have like a further implications for journalism writ large.
hmm I definitely think that. Like, I'm a little, as I am interested, I'm also a little nervous to see, how it plays out because people could take this story and kind of use it as like more of an umbrella. And I don't think that the press or journalists having stringent rules upon them and how they should report or in, revealing their sources and things like that should be a rule when you're reporting on the news.
I mean, I think in general, you and I are both pretty much in agreement on the fact that we like to have a more distinct boundary between government and press. And so
hmm
any situation where there's even kind of the hint of the government stepping in to control someone's like narrative or editorial decision or just even their freedom to exercise their First Amendment right, freedom of the press, like that makes us, I think, more apprehensive. And we, I think, instinctually are kind of identified with the role of a journalist and being journalists ourselves. And so that kind of informs why we're so apprehensive about government overreach into that. But that being said, I don't know. This situation is just such an interesting one because, again, there is like clear kind of constitutional and also like statutory law that explains what you can and can't do. And
hmm
if it is just like an open and shut, like he violated that law, then I don't see how him being a journalist is going to like save him in that case. But we'll have to kind of wait and see. I did notice like a lot of people who are very pro First Amendment, like different organizations and whatnot, have not really been rushing to Lemon's defense. And you would think, like, again, if in fact this was kind of like a case study on a government overreach impacting journalists, you think there would be a lot more people probably rushing to hold him up as an example and say, like, look, this is an example of how the administration is cracking down on journalists. But I haven't really seen that myself. Have you
I
seen
haven't
any of
seen it
that?
much. I haven't seen it much either. I saw the Associated Press posting something on I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I saw them posting an article about it on LinkedIn, but it was more like reporting, not commentary or an editorial.
Have you, in your reporting, ever run into a situation where you had to go, let's say, like under private property, or there was some kind of like restriction on your ability to cover a story, and how did you handle that?
Going on to private property.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I suppose.
I there's definitely been scenarios in which I wanted to go further and, at USD we had a lot of pressure on us from USD's PR team, and that was like pretty well known within USD student media as well. And it kind of got harder after our sophomore year, I want to say. And the more that junior year went on, because I was a news editor junior year, I remember just getting repeatedly annoyed like over and over again. And I'm thinking about like the stories that other students would tell me, and they'd be like, "Oh, I literally have proof. Like, I can show you, I can do this, I can do that." But they wanted to like be protected, and it was also like that line between, I mean, we're college students, like it's a line between like pissing off some of my political science classmates versus like, or and plus PR plus, the president and stuff like that of the school. And deciding whether or not I wanted a good soundbite or something like that. Like oh my gosh, I'm thinking about the time when we found out who won as chief president before it was announced, and I really wanted to announce that, and then it was decided that we weren't going to do that because we needed to keep relationship building over reporting.
Yeah, that's a good example of, I guess, like ways that other factors might influence like your judgment and your editorial decisions and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And I don't know, I personally probably never ran into a situation where I was, obstructed from going onto private property and
Yeah.
where I faced kind of that like overt decision that I had to make. But it sounds like to me, I'm trying to envision a situation where like, yeah, you would have to go on private property to cover a story, and it seems like there's usually ways around that. Like you can stand in public spaces, like when we would cover protests. Usually when we would
Hmm.
cover protests, it's okay to take pictures as long as you're in a public forum, like on a sidewalk or, in like a place where people might reasonably expect that they're going to have their photo taken or get interviewed or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. To me, just going onto private property, even when you're asked to leave and staying, and um, especially during like a worship service, it seems like that does kind of open you up to different scrutiny than, you might get at another form of protest.
Hmm.
Okay, so maybe we could talk a little bit though about, is this part of a broader pattern of, again, like the Trump administration and its contempt for media, journalists, etc.? Um, I don't know, could you see that argument perhaps?
I perhaps can. I don't know. Trump is always spewing some shit about, the media and lies and things like that. Like it all goes hand in hand, even when I think about, the video footage of Alex Preddy's death and what they had said about. I mean, we just recorded an episode about that. Everyone can go listen to it. But, like they are like without the media, I don't think any of this could even be like proven. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that Trump constantly tries to undermine the media because he wants to control the truth from his eyes and his viewpoint.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure, kind of the hallmark of Trump's entire presidency and even back to like his candidacy in 2016 has been this adversarial relationship with the press. And that's just been something that I think he's used to his advantage to like stoke people to support him
Hmm.
and to gain traction and momentum. And the media in on its side has, fed off of his energy to make money and get people's clicks and views and whatnot. Like so they have a very mutually beneficial relationship. But Trump's contempt for the media, even though I think he secretly really likes the media,
Oh, he loves the attention, obviously.
I think it's best exemplified with all of the lawsuits that he's had against like ABC and CBS for various different things, mostly defamation, but also just like whenever people edit things that he thinks is like completely out of context or he doesn't like it, um, or he thinks it skews the perception against him, which sometimes I think is fair. Like sometimes I've seen pretty bad edits that make Trump look unreasonably worse than what he actually said, but. For the most part, I think legacy media has very high standards. They have like they have entire legal departments that they run all their stories by practically. But he has engaged in a lot of lawsuits against legacy media in the past, especially year. And I think that that is very indicative of his just contempt for media.
Hmm. That's like the whole thing too. Like in the past, the media was supposed to be this vessel for political elites to be able to talk to their constituents, and now it's Trump has this me versus them type mentality that has turned a lot of his supporters against legacy media.
So actually, there was an example of this yesterday at the Grammys where Trevor Noah was giving like a monologue, and he had said in this monologue, just like he said like some quip about Clinton and Trump having gone to Epstein's Island, which there is
Hmm.
not proof that I have seen or proof available that I think if it was available, we probably would have seen it by now because of the Epstein dump that just happened. But he said that they had gone to his island, and Trump was hitting back on Truth, saying basically like, "I've never been to the island. There's no proof of this, and you better watch yourself, or else I might be coming for you next." And he was directing this at Trevor Noah. So I don't know. How do you how do you feel about that?
I feel like everyone's been, if he's gonna sue Trevor Noah for defamation, he has to sue so many other people for saying jokes like that.
I know, and the whole like Epstein thing is really gone very far. I mean, we'll probably be talking about that on our main episode this coming week a bit, just because there were so many files that just got released, and we're still kind of trying to make sense of all of it. But I don't know, like I can see it both ways. I think as a journalist, you do have that responsibility to base what you're saying on the available evidence, and if you're gonna make a claim like he went to the island, but you can't like cite kind of chapter and verse, like here's where it is in the files, or here's where I've seen this proven in another setting that like he had actually gone. Um, it is a little bit irresponsible, I think, to be saying something like that, like in a very national setting, like presenting at the Grammys.
Yeah, I also think that Trevor Noah's, I mean, that intro, like monologue, and him just that whole time is very, plays a lot on like satire and jokes too. I mean, not that everything said was an exaggeration by any means, or um, if it wasn't rooted in truth, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, satire, like you just said, is one of the kind of protected parts of journalism also. It's just broadly accepted like parody, satire are two things that you get a lot of leeway with, which, in other contexts, publications, you have to be very careful, like the news, or else you could get sued for something like defamation. But um, yeah, if he
So
was
basically, oh,
no, just say if he was being satirical in that case, it would be very hard to actually sue him.
yeah, so basically, if anyone tries to sue us for anything, this entire channel is satire.
I wonder if that works for people like The Onion and stuff like that. I could just wrap it up and say that again, as kind of journalists ourselves, I tend to side more with journalists when I see instances where I think that the federal government is overstepping itself or cracking down on free speech or freedom of the press, kind of instinctually, that's where I'm at.
Me too.
However, with the Don Lemon case, I think there are kind of extenuating circumstances that make it a little bit different. Again, him being on private property, disrupting worship, could make him subject to charges under these laws that we just discussed, and we'll have to see how far it actually goes.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that if he is charged with everything, and I'm hoping that it doesn't affect the broader scope of journalism, because I think that's when we run into some trouble.
And you said Lemon was arrested, but he's not like being held in jail right now. He was at the Grammys
No.
last night,
Yeah, he
right?
was at the Grammys yesterday. He was like on the red carpet, which I also thought was kind of strange. I'm like, why is this journalist walking the red carpet right now?
I mean, in some ways, this is kind of seems like best case scenario for him, if I'm being honest. Like, if he is trying to maybe garner some kind of attention out of all of this or translate his um, activism or journalism, whatever you want to call it, into like expanding his platform, then maybe mission accomplished.
I know I wouldn't be on the carpet after that, let me tell you.
All right, that's all I got.
Me too. Okay.
Washed
Washed up
out.
out.